Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. Want to improve your organization's customer service? Looking for insider tips to knock your customer socks off? Then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Yannick Grant.
Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. On today's episode, our guest is Jeff Rosenblum. Jeff is a co-founder of Questus, a digital advertising agency that has worked with many of the world's most influential brands, including American Express, Apple, Capital One, Disney, the NFL, Samsung, Starbucks, Universal, Wyndham and Verizon. Jeff created a groundbreaking documentary about the advertising revolution called The Naked Brand, and the book Friction, which explained how passion brands are built. Jeff has lectured at some of the top universities in the world, including Yale, Cornell, Columbia, and the London Business School. He has won some of advertising's most prestigious awards and presented at many of the industry's largest conferences. So without further delay, sit back, plug your earphones in, and let's jump right into this awesome conversation with Jeff. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Now, could you share with us a little bit about your journey? I know that we read your bio, but I like to ask the guests in their own words to just share with us how they got to where they are today.
Yeah, well, I took a pretty unique path to where I'm at. I didn't necessarily go to some of the finest educational institutions in the world. I was a pretty crappy college student, to be honest with you. And when I graduated school, I had to beg my way into an internship at a research company. And they gave me a 3-month shot, and I applied a philosophy that I continue to apply every single day now 3 decades later, which is first one in, last one out, every day. First one in, last one out. So eventually that internship turned into a full-time job, and this was around the birth of the internet. And as a researcher, my job was to collect data. And we had very traditional ways of collecting that data. It was through the mail and through the mall surveys and phone surveys and focus groups. And my job was to figure out how I can collect the highest quality data possible at the lowest price. And then when the internet came along, I had this crazy idea, which was, why can't we start collecting all of that data through the internet, which seems grossly obvious now, but really nobody was doing it at that time, or very few people were doing it at that time. So I was lucky enough to be one of the few people pioneering the field of internet research. So I'm still like a 25-year-old zit-faced kid, and next thing you know, I've got Microsoft, Netscape, Sun Microsystems, Walt Disney, Levi Strauss, all as my clients, because I was one of the very few people who knew how to collect data via the internet. But what was interesting is they didn't just want data. What they wanted was to understand the implications of the internet for their business. And what I quickly realized is that everything about business strategy was about to be revolutionized. And perhaps even more importantly, for my purview, everything about advertising was about to go through a complete and total revolution. So at that point, I realized I no longer wanted to simply collect the data and tell brands what to do with the internet. What I wanted to do was actually do something about it. I wanted to blend the world of data and creativity under one roof and create the next generation of advertising agency. So my college roommate was a world-class artist. He had art gallery openings. Celebrities like Johnny Depp were buying his paintings. And he had shifted a lot of his focus into the world of digital design. So the whole idea was to take a team of outsiders, me from the data and analytics background, he from the creative background, and start an agency that's focused less on interrupting people through traditional media and more about empowering people through digital media.
All right. Amazing. So you really got into it. And you've been in it even before a lot of the organizations that are currently trying to tap into that feature have been into it. Now, you have a new book, Jeff, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Correct.
one of the things that really, really sparked my interest, your book. And it is entitled Exponential. I love the name. So could you tell us a little bit about that book? I know the subtitle for the book is Transform Your Brand by Empowering Instead of interrupting. Could you tell us a little bit about what the book is about? Who is the book geared towards helping? And what do you mean by empowering? And what do you mean by interrupting?
Yeah, so I've always been fascinated by brands that absolutely dominate the competition, brands that grow exponentially in size, in influence, in financial performance. Brands like Warby Parker, in Sweetgreen, in Apple, in Google, in Amazon. So really what I've done is focused in on how advertising has gone through a revolution and we can no longer rely upon interruptions, meaning buying 30-second spots on TV ads, buying full page print ads in magazines, buying pop-up ads in banner ads, in pre-rolls. All of those tools are fine. There's nothing wrong with them. The data and the mathematics show that they work. And as an agency, we leverage the hell out of those techniques. Those are very powerful techniques. But what they drive are good results. They don't drive exponential results. And what we realized is brands that move beyond just interrupting and expand into empowering people, improving their lives one small step at a time, giving them the content and the tools to move their lives forward, those are the brands that drive the exponential results. So that's what the book is about, is how data and creativity, how content and technology can be used to empower an audience and dominate the competition.
All right. Now, you also have in the book that empowerment drives exponential bottom line results. For a business who, empowerment it embodies a lot of different things. And I would just like for you to break down to our listeners, what does empowerment really mean in practical steps or practical implementation? When you say you empower your team members, what does that look like? Could you give us maybe one or two examples?
Yeah, that's a great question, because empowerment really comes in two sides of the equation. How do you empower your customers in your target audience, right? How do you give them the content and the tools to make sure that they're getting more out of the products and the services that you create? Mm-hmm. But I think also, to your question, empowerment comes in the form of culture. How do we help people on our teams do the best work possible? And I think a lot of people have confused culture to mean fun, right? In Silicon Valley, where our headquarters are out in San Francisco, there was the trend of foosball tables and ping pong tables and bars and right in the office. And there's nothing wrong with those ideas, right? Having music and some beers and some games is certainly fun, but that's not culture and that's not empowerment. And what we've realized is great culture is really just about putting people in position to do their best work. That's what people want. If you hire the right people on your team, what they really care about is how can they advance their career as effectively as possible? How can they advance their entire team as effectively as possible? So great culture is really about giving people those tools, giving people the tools to do their best work.
All right. Amazing. So we're giving our employees the tools to ensure that they're doing their best work. Now, you spoke a little bit about culture, and you made reference to the fact that a lot of organizations mistake the whole process of culture as being fun, and, as you said, pool tables and lots of other things that they may attach to the whole vibe of culture. How do factors like culture and transparency help companies to build exponential growth?
Well, the world is just much more complicated than it's ever been before. It at one point you could get by having some really good TV ads to drive awareness and interest, and then you could have a good retail store with some good retail staff members to turn those people who are interested into customers. But the world just really exploded. Now you don't have just those two critical channels and maybe a couple other channels. The world has literally dozens and dozens of channels where you need to not only communicate with your audience, but actually transact with your audience. So think about Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, your desktop website, your mobile website, your mobile apps, your retail stores, which should be connected to all those digital touch points, as well as all those traditional tools like TV, radio, and print. And that's just a few, right? By the time we're done with this podcast, there's going to be 3 or 4 emerging new great tools and channels. So for brands to really succeed, they need to be able to break down the silos that exist internally. You can't just have great creativity sitting in one silo to create a great 30-second spot, and then great salespeople in another silo who are converting folks. You need technology and creativity and data and analytics and project management and finance all to work together seamlessly. And the only way to do that is build great culture, which is based upon safety of communication, which is built upon process with communication, which is built upon tools for communication, ultimately breaking down those silos that exist, recognizing that the world is just so much more complex than it's ever been before, and the target audience is more demanding than it's ever been before, because although things get really complex in the way that we want to tell our brand story, in the ways that we can tell our brand story, the target audience ultimately really wants simplicity. They will not stand for any friction in that purchase journey.
Now, you mentioned that there are multiple channels that exist nowadays. Let's say a brand is looking to be present on all channels, right? But they just don't have the resources to be active on all channels. What would your recommendation be to them? Because I find that a lot of brands are everywhere, but they're not responsive everywhere. And of course, that will impact the whole journey if it is that I'm trying to get in touch with you and it's just a dead end.
That is a really great question. And that is the question that all marketers are going to be faced with in perpetuity. And it's why we also see this addiction to TV in other traditional forms of advertising, because it's just so much easier to say, look, all we need to do is be great at TV and then maybe great at retail and we're done. But that's not consistent with the way that people shop nowadays, the way people conduct research, the way they interact with brands, and obviously much more so with the younger audience. So to answer your question, it really does come back to that culture question, which is, are you breaking down silos so that you can communicate internally, share the data that you have internally, and ultimately leverage the channels that are most effective for you? So the beautiful part of everything that we're doing right now is we've got more data than ever before, unprecedented and unparalleled levels of data. The problem with data is you can really have information overload. You can really have paralysis by analysis. So the key is to really streamline your data down to the key performance indicators. There's probably only 1, 2, or 3 really critical KPIs that you need to track. And through that, have honest conversations about where you want to be and what's most important for your brand and your target audience. There's really no reason to be mediocre at Facebook, mediocre at Instagram, mediocre at Twitter, mediocre at LinkedIn when you can be really great at 1 or 2 of those channels. So data is going to be the answer, and understanding that target audience from not just a data standpoint, but also a qualitative standpoint, so you understand what does your target audience really value, and then couple that with the data to show what's driving your business results.
Amazing. Lovely. Love it. Thank you so much. All right, Jeff. Now, could you share with our listeners what is the one online resource, tool, website, or app that you absolutely can't live without in your business?
Oh my, that's a great question. I don't know if I have one, but I'll tell you, I think the key to our success is based upon a few things, and one of them is education, right? We really preach collaboration, celebration, and education. So I think the apps that enable us to get educated are probably the most important. And there's just a few content sources that I think are really powerful. I'm just a huge believer in reading the Wall Street Journal from cover to cover every single day, particularly in the world of advertising, where it's too easy for us to get caught up in Ad Age and in Ad Week and other stuff that really just talks about our own industry. But I think as advertisers and marketers, for us to be most effective, we need to step back and look at the overall business experience and the overall business strategy, because that's what marketing really is. So I think reading the the Wall Street Journal cover to cover is one of the most important things that anybody can do. But there's also some great newsletters out there. I'm a huge believer in Alan Murray from Time Inc., from Fortune. He has a world-class daily newsletter. But I think for anyone who's listening, you got to find 2 or 3 resources that you can go to, not occasionally, but virtually every single day, so you can watch how these stories unfold and how these trends and metrics unfold. But you can never be too educated in a world that's as dynamic as it is today.
Yeah, agreed. Could you also share with our listeners maybe 1 or 2 books that have had the biggest impact on you? It could be a book that you read a very long time ago, or even one that you read recently, but it definitely has left, an impressionable mark on you.
Yeah, that's also a great question. I'm a pretty voracious reader. If I'm honest, with business books, I very often will just hammer the first 3 chapters and find that books often get redundant, so I don't make it all the way through. And that's one of the things we try to do with Exponential is treat it like the layers of an onion and make a key point, but have every chapter deal with a new topic as it relates to leveraging the consumer journey or leveraging culture, so that the book continues to unfold. And I think a couple of books that have been really influential for me is one of them, which was written by Bill Walsh. I don't know how to pronounce this word, posthumously. Meaning after he passed away, his family took his notes. And the name of the book is The Score Takes Care of Itself. And he's one of the greatest football coaches ever. He was the single greatest coach ever until Bill Belichick came along. And his idea was really based upon the concept of putting the ball where the other team isn't, which really is a great business strategy, meaning don't follow what everybody else is doing. Find that white space and let that dictate where your business strategy goes. But the bigger thing about The Score Takes Care of Itself that you can get from the title is he really focused in on culture. And when he first took over the 49ers before he won a bunch of Super Bowls, he was focused on all these little things like, how do secretaries answer the phone? And everyone was like, what are you doing? You're a football coach, and why are you worried about how people answer the phone? That has nothing to do with what we're trying to accomplish here. And, he almost didn't make it. They almost fired him. But his point was like, we're going to take care of all the little things. We're going to take care of the culture. And when we do that, per the title, the score will take care of itself. And that's just an absolutely amazing book. Another great book is Who by Jeff Smart, which has been really influential for me. And really what he gets down to is this point about culture. But culture really starts with one thing, which is hiring the absolute best human beings possible. You can't really build culture unless you first build a team of A-plus players. And the point of the book is, if you want to get A-plus players, there's a process that you can follow. It's not just a goal. It's not just a philosophy. There's a methodical process that can be used to find those A-plus players. And, to be honest with you, we don't always nail the process, and you can never be too process-oriented for things like that. But it was a real game changer for us in regard to how we approach recruiting and bringing on world-class talent.
Wow, amazing. So we'll have those 2 amazing books that Jeff just shared with us in the show notes of this episode. Now, Jeff, could you share with our listeners what's one thing that's going on in your life right now that you're really excited about? Either something you're working on to develop yourself or your people.
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I think there's probably 2 things, the obvious and maybe the less obvious, but much more important, which is, from a business standpoint, this idea of marrying together data and creativity, this idea of building brands through empowerment instead of interruptions. We started our agency 23 years ago based upon this principle. And now the whole world, the whole business world is really waking up to, this is it. This is the model. This is how great brands are going to be built now and in perpetuity. In a lot of ways, COVID didn't change business. I think in a lot of ways, COVID expedited business and advanced it about 7 years forward. So one of the really exciting things for us is that tons of amazing brands are reaching out to us, and we're in conversations with some of the biggest and the best brands in the world who are really excited about this concept of looking at the entire consumer journey, creating content and tools that empower people rather than just building brands through interruptions. But really, the less obvious and perhaps even more exciting thing is, as our business grows and we take advantage of these opportunities, the exposure I'm getting to world-class team members and the opportunities we're creating for our team members is probably the most rewarding and exciting experience I've ever had in business. Just watching young folks on our team take on bigger challenges, get promotions, do some of the best work I've ever seen in my career, fundamentally and completely outperform me in every way, shape, or form, and then recruiting in new incredible team members who are starting that journey also, that to me is so incredibly rewarding, fulfilling, and exciting.
All right. Amazing. So our listeners would have tapped into this episode, Jeff, and they're quite intrigued with your book and also with what you're doing. Where can they find you online if they wanted to follow your journey or even to get in contact with you?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. So the book is coming out in January. It'll be up on Amazon. It's called Exponential by Jeff Rosenblum. My website is questus.com, Questus.com. You can find me on Instagram at the Jeff Rosenblum, and you can find me on Twitter at JR Questus.
All right. Now, before we wrap our episodes up, we always like to ask our guests, do you have a quote or a saying that during times of adversity or challenge, you'll tend to revert to this quote? It kind of helps to get you refocused or get you back on track if for any reason you get derailed.
That's a great question, but no, not really. I think if there's any quote that I rely upon that becomes a mantra for life in general, it's if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing.
Okay. If it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. All right. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jeff, for hopping on our podcast with us today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule to share a little bit about what your new book that's coming out in January of 2022 is all about. How exponential growth can really help to accelerate a business and just all of the things that can really help to propel an organization to navigate their customer experience in this dynamic and exciting period of life that we're all going through. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and have a great day.
So just want to remind our listeners, please feel free to hop onto Facebook and join our private Facebook group, Navigating the Customer Experience Community, and follow us on Twitter at NavigatingCX. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant. We also have a new book available on Amazon, The ABCs of a Fantastic Customer Experience. It's available in ebook and paperback. So if you want to increase revenue in your organization, build a stronger service culture, and create employees or develop employees who are really mastering service delivery in your business, you need to grab a copy of this book. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant.
Thanks for listening. For more awesome resources to take your customer service game to another level, head over to navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. See you next time.